Okay, topic of today's discussion is evolution. So, this concept raises a lot of controversy all over. People start talking about evolution, people really start getting mad. Why?
Because people believe in God.
And people don't believe in God.
And people don't believe in evolution.
Okay.
And people are stupid and decide to fight with it.
Okay, all right. And that's what happens, folks. That's exactly what happens. I couldn't have picked a better example, Kiki. Immediately, people start getting upset, and they start talking about, well, you said because people believe in God, and some people are stupid, and blah blah blah. And that words like that are where a lot of fights occur. Evolution, in its very simple form, here's what it means, gang. Change over time. That's what it is. To evolve means to change.
Is Bill Nye? Does he do it?
Okay. I'll try to give you some background in this. Okay. There is a tremendous amount of diversity. To life on Earth. Okay? I asked you to come up with some examples here in this thing. We've got a tremendous amount of diversity between examples. Bacteria. They're living things, and they're really, really small. They don't have a nucleus. Some bacteria, like archaebacteria, live in really weird places, uninhabitable by other things. Thermal vents in the ocean, the Dead Sea. They live in the acidic environment of your stomach. It's like they live in impossible places. Then we got other stuff like mushrooms or fungus. Okay? That's another weird thing. Fungus has the ability to eat dead stuff and live off of it, break down logs that are made out of cellulose, really tough material. They just infuse throughout them, break it down with enzymes, and then they live off of death. But they thought forever that fungus was like a plant, but there's one major difference between plants and fungus. You know what it is? Plants do what? Go ahead, Hannah. Photosynthesis. Fungus do not. They eat stuff just like we do, but they eat a lot weirder stuff. Okay? So molds and things like that are considered fungus. Then we have plants. And there's just a myriad of different types of plants. If you think about seaweed, you think about stuff like, Venus flytraps and the great sequoias and things like that. Then we have humans. We're pretty different. We think a lot. We build cars and stuff. We build computers and keep them in our pockets and call people on them and stuff. We do things that are different than most animals do, okay? Then we have, like, sponges. They're animals, but they look completely different than every other type of animal. Yeah, sponges are alive. They're actually animals. They're multicellular. They sit in the ocean. They filter feed, and yeah, they're alive too.
Pineapple under the sea.
Or a pineapple under the sea, right? Okay. Fungus. Oh, I'm leaving out some things like protozoa, protists, algae. I feel like I'm leaving out some other major kingdoms. Bacteria, fungus. That's pretty much it. But I mean, we've got a tremendous amount of diversity. Here is the question that we're trying to answer. Question.
Are you writing?
Where did all of this diversity come from? You guys know what I mean by diversity?
Arguments over what's right and what's wrong.
Well, not in this case, but yeah, sometimes there's a divide in how people feel about this kind of stuff. But in this case, diversity, all I'm talking about is variations.
Isn't it because of religion?
We're getting there.
Okay.
Okay? Variation or differences. Basically, I'm saying bacteria is super different than plants. And fungus is different than plants. And humans are different than bacteria. There's a tremendous amount of diversity in living things. There's some things we all have in common. We all need energy. We're all made of cells. But there is a lot of diversity. But the question that was plaguing scientists, that plagued people for centuries, was where did all of this diversity come from? Where did it come from? Okay? Now, a lot of people didn't ask this question for a very long time. It depends on who you ask. Okay? If we ask the church, where did all this diversity come from? God. God created 7 days. God created the birds and the fish of the sea. God created man, so on and so forth. Well, science has trouble with this, okay? Does science hate God? Does it hate church? Does it hate... No. No. Well, some scientists do, for really weird reasons. What's strange, if you really take a step back and look at this whole thing, there are people that are equally angry on both sides for the same reasons. I'll explain that here in a minute. Science says if we have this as our answer, then we negate all of science. If we explain everything away in supernatural, then we give rise to basically, oh, my chest hurts. Likely, if my chest hurts and I feel pain shooting through my arm, it's a what? Shortness of breath, heart attack, right? Science says, well, if we just leave everything over to deity and say it was God, well, my chest hurts. Well, you're being smitten by God. And it could be that you had too many cheeseburgers over the course of your lifetime and your coronary arteries are blocked. So their concern is that if we allow God into this answer, we allow God into every answer of every scientific question, and it negates science. So science fought for centuries to try to get a name for itself and separate science from religion. Okay? So that's where the diversity is. That's where the issue comes to be. Now, science says diversity comes from evolution. And evolution, species changing over time to adapt and to best fit their environment. Now, what am I telling you to believe? Nothing. It is not my goal to tell you to believe anything, one way or the other. My goal is to encourage you to think, to look at the whole picture, see what it tells you, and make a decision, an educated decision on your own. This is the plague and the issue of both scientists and people of faith alike. Okay? Somebody else told them what to believe, and they didn't search it out. They didn't search out the matter in the Bible. They didn't search out the matter in science textbooks. They didn't search out the matter on their own to try to figure it out. They just took somebody else's word for it. Even scientists do this. Well, there's scientists that are smarter than me that studied this to find this, therefore it must be true. So there's issues on both sides of this spectrum. Okay? So, where did all the diversity come from? Okay. So, basically, I'm not trying to tell you not to believe this, but what I'm going to tell you is this. I'm going to present the evidence, both with all of its benefits and all of its flaws, because there are some, for evolution. Okay? All right, so this is where the conflict is. The conflict is in history. The conflict is, where did the diversity come from? So, church answer, God. God created all life. Okay? Evolution says life evolved. Okay? Well, let's go to this now. Here's one of the issues. All life comes from other life. Okay? All life comes from other life. Okay? Are you with me? Where did you come from?
My mom.
Yeah, you got a cell donation. You got a cell donated from dad, a cell donated from mom. Those combine to make you. Okay? Where did they come from?
Their mom.
Their mom and dad. So grandma and grandpa all the way back. Okay? Issues. All life comes from other life. What's the issue?
Where did life start?
Yeah. Where did life begin? Okay? We know the church answer. Where did life begin?
Adam and Eve.
Well, where'd they come from?
God.
God created.
Where did God come from?
That's a good question. All right. Science.
Can you name it?
Oh, yeah. Science says, where did life begin? Science says it begins by
That's a pretty example.
this is still a matter of debate. This is a matter of conflict. Because even the simplest living things like bacteria are made of a membrane, some pretty complex organelles. They're made of enzymes and proteins. They're made of DNA. All those things would have to come together. Science still is trying to understand how this came about. Not sure. But they will not accept this. Why?
Because if God existed, then science wouldn't exist.
Well, and a lot of scientists believe that, okay? But if we include God in everything, like in every scientific argument, then there is no science. We cannot make it, because remember back to the very first unit, science, there's 3 bulls. Must be what? Testable. Actually, it's more than 3, but I accepted 3 bulls. But testable, what else? Measurable. And observable. And generally repeatable. Are any of these things really true about God? No, because religion is based on faith. That's the essence of religion, is it's based on faith, okay? But this, science has to be testable, measurable, observable, repeatable. And that also makes an issue with regard to evolution, because we're trying to understand something that happened before. It's not necessarily repeatable. It's not super observable. It's somewhat measurable, and it's not really testable. So that's the issue. Okay. All right. So now here's a question for evolution. All right. Why do organisms change? Okay. Here, if we're sticking with the church answer, they are the same as they've always been, that God created. Okay.
Okay.
And there's a difference here also. There's a spectrum in this as well. There are some that believe that God created, but then they evolved thereafter. God created a few simple life forms, or the base of most life forms, and then these variations came from those. So there's a spectrum all the way through here. Okay. Why do organisms change then, according to evolution? What would be the driving force? Yes, that's the goal, to survive. Okay? Here is what it is, to survive. The concept is this. This is the concept of natural selection. Natural selection is the big idea behind evolution. Basically, what it means is organisms best suited to their environment will live to do what? Reproduce. Those that are not suited will die and not reproduce. Okay?
You scoot it up.
Yes. The concept of this right here, and you may have heard this before, it's called survival of the fittest.
Good job.
Survival of the fittest. Now, in our last unit we had in genetics, there was a father of modern genetics, and who was that?
Gregory.
Gregor Mendel. Okay. Who is the father of evolutionary theory? Yep. Okay.
What's
This
his first name?
Charles. This idea was first penned, first written by Charles Darwin. Okay? This idea was first written by Charles Darwin. We watched a little bit on the history of Charles Darwin the other day, trying to understand how he came up with the ideas that he did about species changing and things like that. And so he's the one that said, I noticed, when he was in the Galapagos Islands and he was studying, do you guys remember what species of animal he studied in the Galapagos?
Monkeys.
No? Tortoises and finches, yeah. He noticed that on the different islands, there were different variations of the same bird based on what the food supply was. Some of them had larger beaks for cracking nuts. Some of them had longer, skinnier beaks for getting pollen and nectar out of flowers because the food supply was different. So some were able to survive on these islands. Originally, when he brought all these birds back to study, he thought they were all different species of different types of birds, like completely different birds, and found out they were all the same species. They were all the same type of bird originally. And then they were different species that had developed as a result of different changes and whatnot. Okay, so that's just basically our introduction. Again, it's important for me to emphasize, it is not my goal to tell you what to believe. It is not. It is my goal to present you with the information that you can make an educated choice as to what you believe. Okay, I don't want to try to convince you one way or the other, and you should make your choices. Does that make sense? Based on what you understand and based on what you know, and research it out. Seek to understand something rather than to blindly accept something, whether it's evolution or creation. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. So that's where we'll stop for today.